if you get a customer to be loyal, the profit increase can range anything from 25 to 95%.
Wow.
I think brands will start getting smart and start investing more in, whether that's on technology or marketing, on retention and loyalty, and with the fluidity and with the lower barriers to entry. I think it's really important.
Welcome to Loyalty Stories, Antavo's podcast on customer loyalty and loyalty programs. I'm Charlie Hawker, Partner Manager for UKI, Benelux and Nordics. Antavo is a technology vendor that powers loyalty programs all over the world. We help various great businesses such as KFC and Benefit Cosmetics, as well as global automotive, fashion companies and other amazing verticals. In this podcast, Loyalty Stories, we dive into the trends around customer loyalty and loyalty programs. We talk with industry experts around the world to pick their brain to learn what's next for loyalty. Today's guest is Jayna. Morning, Jayna. How are you?
Morning. Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Would you mind introducing yourself, the company you work for, and kind of your role there? That would be great.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Jayna Kothary, and I sort of cover three broad areas. Our technology offering, including all of our technology partners and all the services we provide around that across the globe. So that's everything from the West Coast of the US to Japan, China. Our commerce thinking, and really we're a relationships agency, and I'll come on to that more. But things like CRM, commerce, loyalty, experiences, they're at the core of what we do. So I also run our commerce business, and then finally consulting. So, you know, the world we live in right now, I think you're no longer you don't need to be a management consultancy firm to need to offer consulting to just like navigate the whole digital world. So the consulting piece as well. So technology, commerce, and consulting is the remit my team covers.
Fantastic. Well, that is quite broad. That's a huge role. So honoured to have you here today. So thank you very much for joining. And I think we're going to have some really, really good chats around diving into loyalty, because it must touch on all three of those areas. So to kind of kick us off, I'm going to ask you what your favourite loyalty program is currently and why.
Okay. You've touched on a really strange question for me, because we're sort of moving away from thinking of loyalty in programs and rewards terms, because we think customers are thinking of it quite differently. But I will answer your question. The ones that spring to mind really recently are Sephora and Starbucks. Sorry, you told me to pick one. But the reason is they're quite personalized, and they've both managed to take away from just this idea of rewards and points and coupons, which I feel a lot of brands are still in. So especially, you know, the airline industry, the hotel industry, I think they set the stall, but both Starbucks and Sephora have a very emotional side to the way they think about loyalty, but beyond those pieces. So I quite like those. They've also, as you know, I am a geek, and they've also embraced the technology innovation that's out there. If we think of Sephora in particular, you know, they've embraced virtual reality and being able to do things like try-ons, and they've managed to connect the in-store and the digital experience pretty well as well. So it'd be some of my reasons if I had to like a loyalty program.
Perfect. No, there's definitely a world that we work in as well, pushing beyond, you know, points based loyalty. It's got to mean more than that. It's got to be emotional. Like we do things around activity tracking and things like that. And our chief marketing officer, Juja, actually sat down with Sephora and talked around their gamified experience with for Glossy magazine, actually. So it's a great one to call out there. So it's absolutely, I think it's a really interesting one, and people have got to start doing more than kind of what was the norm, say, I don't know, even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So from your role, and you've obviously got quite a very broad role, but kind of big role at the company, and it might be we can talk about your career as well around kind of what's the kind of the work that you're most proud of, and you can mention the client's name. You don't need to. You can keep it vague. Absolutely fine. But yeah, I just want to kind of get a bit more of an understanding of kind of your work, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I think, look, just to set some context, I think the work that I'm certainly most proud of is not when we put loyalty in a bucket, right? Okay, so the client doesn't necessarily come to you and say, hey, I have a loyalty problem. Actually, that's very rarely the brief. We find that purchase, so commerce as a whole, loyalty and the experience piece is really, really well linked, and actually one feeds the other off the other. So just to touch on a few, I mentioned airlines being backwards in my program definition, but actually we did work with an airline where we reimagined the whole customer journey, and we thought about where can we bring value into those people's lives beyond the category in which they're engaging us with. So they're in the airline industry, but they may be coffee lovers or pet lovers, or have a number of other things that are important to them in their lives. So we did a piece of work to, one, reimagine the customer journey, but two, have a method to use data to understand them on a deeper level, and then be able to bring value to them from into their lives in other parts. So really proud of that. We also worked with a major auto company who had their rewards program and a credit card that they launched very separate. And actually, we don't live our lives in buckets and compartments. Actually, humans are quite complex. And so we worked with them to make a rewards program that brought both of those together and connected much more with the emotional and psychological aspects of why one might fall in love with a brand. So if you think of a car, you're going to think of things like, if you have a family, safety and security, and you may think of convenience, your time poor. And so really understanding the behavioral, motivational, emotional aspects of why someone has a need and is with a brand, and we re-engineered their way of thinking about loyalty to capture these things. So there are a couple that we're really proud of. There's also a coffee capsules have become commoditized because there's a lot of copies out there and things. So we did work with Nespresso as an example to think of their reward program based on a different dimension, and that's tenure. And so thought about, okay, what is the length of the relationship that one has with that brand, and then how do you reward that tenure? So there, just a few examples there.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting about how you get on all three examples where you've kind of moved a client from quite a transactional relationship to really actually showing what it can do on a more human level is very, very interesting. And often it's a very hard message sometimes to start that conversation, but once people buy into it, always it's proved by what you've been able to achieve that they are receptive of those messages. And the bringing of, with the auto example, a credit card together with a rewards point, that's no simple thing. That's probably two very separate teams working together, and you've got to sell it in. So it's a fantastic achievement. So definitely something to be very proud of. That's really...
Yeah. And you've touched on something really important. People always think about the external things that you have to do with a loyalty program, but there's quite a lot in terms of emotional internal employee buy-in, and then internal processes and ways of working that help you deliver that outward, difference in the way that you work on loyalty.
Absolutely. So kind of zoning in on loyalty as an industry now, what are kind of the big changes that you've witnessed over recent years? And that could be in any one of the three pillars of your role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, we, and I believe really very strongly in it personally as well, which is loyalty is not a program, it's a relationship, right? And people's and I don't want to make this about COVID, but people's relationship with things has changed, right, over time. So whether that's your relationship with your own personal identity, your relationship with the internet, the way you shop, the way you work, our relationship with things has evolved in a really big way. And, that also includes our relationship with brands. And when we think about our relationship with brands, and who we're loyal to, you have no reason to be loyal, is I think the starting point, right? So unless that brand is delivering value into your lives, and that relationship with that brand is bringing value into their lives, then I think brands have to work much harder to get that. And I think some of the trends they're seeing is there's three things. There's three core components. Is our sort of point of view of recent times. Is one, people want the best possible experience that they can get, and that kind of level setting of expectations is not coming from within your industry. It's really the best last experience you had is what you're going to expect from the next, right? So it doesn't matter if that experience was with in a coffee shop or with Amazon. People are carrying the expectations across categories. So what's sort of the best experience you can give people? The second one is building an emotional connection with a brand. And I'll give you an example, and it's stuck in my head from years ago. But Virgin is not where I mostly fly. I'm trapped in the British Airways point system, and now I'm going to keep my status. I keep flying with them. I don't think they're the best. Okay, and that's a whole nother debate we can have there. But I flew Virgin one day, and it was a late night flight back from the US, and I was the front seat of the business class cabin. And actually, all I wanted to do was sleep. The flatbed was the most important thing to me at that point, right? And everyone kept going to the bathroom, and I couldn't sleep. And I asked if there was a seat I could move to, and there wasn't. 2 weeks later, they'd logged and remembered that. They logged it somewhere, because when I was assigned that seat again automatically for some reason, they proactively moved me and said, we've moved you because we remember that it affected your sleep 2 weeks ago. Now, that stayed with me from years and years ago. And that's what I mean by an emotional connection, right? Like that, I remember it. It completely changed my brand perception. So how do you bring value into people's lives, the people that are important to them themselves, and build an emotional connection? That's the second sort of important factor. And then the final one is bringing value to them across their life ecosystem. So we call it life syncing. How do you know that all the things that are important to somebody, and build partnerships that allow you to deliver loyalty outside of the category? So a great example is the partnership between Delta and Starbucks. Okay, they're completely not in this space whatsoever, worlds apart. But the feedback on that partnership is great, because people feel that they know they're getting things back in terms of value that are important to them outside of that category. So, the emotional connection, the value across their life ecosystem, and the outstanding experience, and the intersection of that's really modern loyalty versus programs.
Yeah, no, I really, really love that kind of way of kind of breaking down modern loyalty across those three areas. And I guess brands need to be so aware, like their peripheral vision needs to be so much broader than it ever was before. It was kind of like, right, who's my competitor set? Years ago, I used to work on one of the big six energy giants in a marketing capacity, and it was kind of like, right, what are the other five doing? Whereas now, like, for example, Amazon has made next day delivery the goal for absolutely everyone in retail, and beyond, in grocery, everything now. So it's kind of, yes, I love that kind of those three pillar way of thinking, and kind of challenging brands to go, look, you're doing something, you might be doing it well, but we can do it so much better if we look at these three areas where we can really impact our customers with experience, emotional loyalty, and beyond into their lifestyle ecosystem, as you call it. That's a really way.
And you know what? It's hard, right, Charlie? It's easier to set up a program, a rewards program, than to do those three things. But what's really interesting is when you work across like CRM and commerce and experience design, MarTech, all of those play a role in what we've just talked about, right? MarTech to scale and automate, thinking about commerce way beyond just the purchase. What's the after sales? What's the customer service that comes after that? CRM, like what channels do you want to talk to people in and how and why? And so all those bits. So, for us, experiences, commerce and CRM are really core central services, MarTech too. So they all actually play a really big role to get that right, to build that sort of three-pillared ecosystem.
Yeah, and the big thing is getting them started, right? So it's kind of like, right, let's change it. And then you can do lots of other tweaking down the line. I mean, even if I think about like the experience of I think Apple changed the game with kind of boxes, or kind of when you receive the product, it was really nice to open that package and then see your phone was the first thing you see, not a manual or something like that. So yeah, I think you can go really, really deep, but I think you've explained it very well at a top level of how to get people started thinking about this and then challenge and iterate and all those great things. So yeah, thank you.
You're bringing up all my favorite examples, like Apple, like even aesthetic, the whole experience, the way someone feels when they open something. I still refuse to put a case on my iPhone because I think it's just so beautiful that I might smash it. That's not going to be fun. I have a 1-year-old, but nonetheless, it's just the way it makes you feel is quite impactful.
Absolutely. Even like, just to go down this rabbit hole of like, you go to their Apple store, you go to the Genius Bar, so they're empowering their employees with a status of being experts and geniuses, and it's really subliminal, but it's also powerful, right? So I really enjoy that. And
actually, I know we're like belaboring the point, but if you go to an Apple page on Amazon, and then you go to like a lot of Amazon pages are very commodity, right? It's a picture, a shot of the product, and it's a blurb. But they even make the Amazon page consistent, right?
Yeah.
In consistency, people then really believe. And so when we talk about the emotional side of things, and people really want to believe in who you are, what you stand for, the experience you're going to give them, that they're doing that even in the what can be a commodity shop.
Yeah, and it hits those three pillars as well, doesn't it? It's consistency of experience, consistency across your ecosystem, wherever you're, interacting with your brand. Very interesting. Thank you. So if we look get our crystal balls out and kind of look at kind of trends coming down the track. So and we'll say around kind of loyalty in general, not just as in a program level. Sure. What are kind of things that you are seeing clients ask for maybe, or things you expect to happen in the next, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I think things are going to become more fluid. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of new and emerging brands. People look at Glossier. You mentioned Glossier at the beginning. Brands can come out of nowhere. It's completely democratized in terms of who can enter the market. The barriers to entry are really low. I could really build a Shopify site sitting and I'm a technologist, to get me, other people, anyone can pretty much learn the Shopify basics, build something sitting on their dining table and launch a product. And I'm oversimplifying. The point is the barriers to entry are low. And I think one of the big trends is going to be the impact of influencers, macro and micro, into the loyalty space. Because, I started this saying loyalty's it's a relationship, not a transaction. Unless those relationship foundations are built, Rick, on deep relationship science, and we're attacking all those three pillars I mentioned, people are going to continue to be really, really fluid. And I think one of the big things that we need to think about in the loyalty space is influencers, because barriers to entry are low. New brands are launching all the time. People need much more reason to be loyal. And advocacy is coming from two places. It's coming from advocacy would be the next trend I would talk about, is influencers are being listened to in quite a lot. And so brands are coming up from nowhere and growing market share. And then advocacy plays a really big part in loyalty as well. So I'm more likely to listen to my hairdresser about hair product than I am, some brand, maybe some, random brand marketing that hasn't affected my emotions. So, for example, my point is that advocates, and especially ones that you either consider experts or people you trust, are going to play a really big role, and we need to sort of get after that. So L'Oreal, for example, works with a company called Expertly, which allows experts to become influencers of their products, and then they get rewarded. Those experts get rewarded for sales. So I think influencing and advocacy is going to be a really big thing. And then the second trend, I think if brands are smart, there's a lot of focus at the moment on customer acquisition. And there was a recent Bain report that showed the cost of customer acquisition, new customer acquisition, has gone up 50%. And at the same time, if you get a customer to be loyal, the profit increase can range anything from 25 to 95%.
Wow.
If you take those two things together, really shifting budgets from typically we've gone, I'm going to spend the most on getting new customers, and then I'm going to spend quite a bit less on
retaining
retention, and I think brands will start getting smart and start investing more in, whether that's on technology or marketing, on retention and loyalty, and with the fluidity and with the lower barriers to entry, I think it's really important.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I love that. On the kind of the influencer and advocacy side, it's definitely something that people have been talking about it for a while, but it seems to have hit kind of, critical mass now, that people are kind of really doubling down. And it's definitely in kind of, when you see like a younger generation, that's how they consume content. It's short, sharp, and it's kind of influencer led. And you're like, oh my God, this is a thing now. This is really, really happening. So yeah, no, it'd be really interesting to see how that kind of transfers into kind of more mainstream, and kind of bigger established brands with maybe a slightly older demographic.
Absolutely. And, just on the advocacy point, I mean, Forrester did a report yet recently, and it was saying that there's an 88% chance that people will stay with your brand if you've nurtured them and they feel valued and appreciated.
Wow. Okay. Great.
I think there's such an obsession with acquisition of news, that these things get missed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. And then as we kind of bring it back to kind of, you mentioned you're a technologist, and that's kind of your kind of heartland, I guess. What do you look for in kind of tech vendors to support these sorts of, trends and features that are coming down the track?
Yeah, typically when you think of the larger MarTech providers, the Adobe, Salesforce of the world, in the past it's always been about automation and scale. I've always said actually you need a very broad ecosystem of partners. You need the big monolithic platforms, absolutely. You need the small and medium enterprises that are really focused on, you're not trying to do everything. You're focused on just a commerce offering or just a loyalty offering or just CRM offering. And then the startup ecosystem, because in the last two, you get your competitive differentiation if you've really built the right ecosystem of partners. And so we talk to clients in a very tech agnostic way. and say there isn't one answer. So, we're not an Adobe partner or a Salesforce partner or a Google partner. We're a partner of many. And we sort of help say, actually, for your need state, where do we need to go? And I think in the loyalty space, the niche category is going to do pretty well, because what happens with the larger players sometimes is people don't know how to use, say there's sales, customer service, sales, commerce, marketing, how to take the different elements of that to really affect loyalty. So I think there is a place really for niche players like yourselves who are 100% focused on loyalty. I can also see a world, and look, we've not talked about AI once, and we've gone through a whole interview, which is quite amazing. But data is going to play the biggest role, I think, and no matter what category of those three you're in, having data as a foundation is going to be really core, because if we go back to the three pillars, you have to know the person to build an emotional connection.
Yep.
You quite want to make the experience reasonably personalized. It's a buzzword. I don't want to go too far down there, but again, you need data, and again, to understand the rest of their life ecosystem, you need data. So I think the data as a foundation is going to be important for any technology player in this space, and then whether it's part and parcel of a big multi-cloud offering or it's a niche, there's space for both. I think also having the right partners who can implement the technologies and service of the client. So really bringing together brand and marketing with technology is going to be important in loyalty, right? Because oftentimes especially in some of these large clients that we work with, a L'Oreal, a Nestle, a Reckitt, a General Motors, a MasterCard, these are big companies. Your technology and IT department is separate to your marketing department, to your sales department. And we often end up being the glue, right? Partners end up being the glue. And so having partners in the big enterprises that really know how to use the technology to bridge those organizational and department silos, I think is going to be really important as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's really great to hear, kind of that. And we definitely believe in the niching down on do one thing really, really well. And then there is space for that within loyalty, because you're right. Some of the big monoliths, as you call them, they have offerings, but they're not, from what you've talked about, kind of building that emotional and being fluid and being kind of, innovative to the changing behaviors of a loyalty base within a brand, that they simply aren't able to do that. Whereas, niching down, and our partner network is powerful across the, the marketing automation platforms and those sorts of things. So yeah, thank you very much for that. I think it's a really, really great point. And that's a wrap. That's the final question. I think the best bit was when we were talking around trends and things that are coming down the track around kind of our experiences with Apple being very kind of aligned, and then kind of how they take that forward with influencers and stuff like that. It's so interesting. I mean, it's an amazing position that you see this world in. You are a very senior member of your company, and you can see this across a breadth of clients, but you've been doing it for a long time as well. So it's kind of like there's a lot of kind of knowledge there. You've done it.
Funny, right? Because it's suddenly become sexy. Like,
yeah.
We've been, doing CRM and experiences and commerce and all these things for a long time. And if you think about the relationships are about loyalty, right? You build, it's like having a good friend over several years, and you nurture that friendship, and they are inherently more loyal. It's no different to that. And we've sort of been working on it for so long, but now suddenly, I don't know if it's COVID effects or some new revenue streams for people, but people are just talking about it more, which is great. But it's not new territory, right? It's humanity. I mean, if we take the friend parallel,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's really good. And then, but I think another interesting point of what you said is like you still fly with BA because there's something within that emotional connection of I can't lose out. How do I transfer this tier to Virgin? And then I can, yeah, it's kind of working out that mechanic, but you've got some like what they call it, an emotional investment, but there's another term for it where you've invested so much in that thing that you can't walk away from it now.
I'm looking for ways, and if you're a brand, the last thing you want is a customer actively looking for ways. And so you want someone to be in a relationship with you because they want to be in a relationship with you, not because it's like a bad marriage or something. Like, it's like I'm here because I have to be here versus I'm here because I really want to be here. And that's the distinction, right?
It's like, going to a wedding and you're a plus one. It's like, I don't need to be here. I don't want to be here.
Well, just small talk. Yeah.
Talk and go on. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Wherever you listen to us, be it a podcast platform, YouTube or LinkedIn, please like and subscribe to our channel. That way you'll get notified about this and the next episodes. Visit Antavo.com to discover your next loyalty software. Antavo is a next-gen loyalty program technology vendor used by global companies like KFC and Benefit Cosmetics and other global brands. Also, visit Jayna's website to discover how they could help you. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.